This isn't a Fuzz Face, it's not a Muff. It is of course the Jordan Bosstone, the forgotten fuzz that gave Randy California his hidden snarling snap that he used like a punch in the face. And if you're quick, you can snap up one of 3 units that I'll have on sale with this video. I'm not building this from any sort of kit. You won't find any PCBs here. I'll be bringing together a random mix of tagboard and vintage components. I'll also be using all of the knowledge gained in my 22 years service as a Royal Navy Chief Engineer. You'll be getting a precision made piece of equipment. So this is what we're going to be turning into a Randy California fuzz. It is of course the Jordan Bosstone. Starting off with our enclosure. I've got this bronze real leather finish on this one. It's not a leatherette like I normally use. This is actual leather. And the base is kind of got this strip of Japanese fabric in. I'm really happy with how these turned out. And of course, those who know, I love a bit of Banksy artwork. Banksy, potentially, it comes from Liverpool, which is my home city. I've heard reports that he comes from there. No one really knows, but that'd be interesting. And I love this artwork. Some of my earliest pedals, in fact, I've got a live stream coming soon where I'm going to repair 2 of my early pedals. And one of them's got this on. But some of the early pedals that I did had this artwork on just because I love it so much. I've kind of had to go with what I've got today. So there's a lot of carbon film resistors and stuff. However, I am going to be using this. So this is an ACU card from a Type 23 frigate. And you'll notice all of these old tantalum capacitors on there. They're amazing for guitar pedals. They basically stay within spec for years. They never fail. Usually on these boards, as you can see the charting up here, it's these resistors up here that fail. But more importantly than that, we have all of these transistors. And these are 2N1711s. They're old. I don't know when this board was put together. I'm sure there'll be a date on it. Anyway, it come off the old HMS Monmouth, now decommissioned. In fact, I watched her get towed out to go to Turkey to be chopped up for razor blades. Such a shame. She was a beautiful ship and she deserved better than what she got. Anyway, I reclaimed this board from there once it failed. Went into the bin, or for my American friends, the trash. I did a bit of bin diving, or actually, full disclosure, I probably sent all of my lads into the skips to get me all of these out rather than me going in myself. Let's be honest. Anyway, I'm going to be using these transistors in this build today, and also the 2 other subsequent builds that I'm going to be doing, and that will be live right now with this video. They'll all look like this, all 3 of them. They have the same leatherette, the same finish, the same components, and of course the same vintage military spec transistor. This is the tagboard we're going to be using today, and let's get our drawing up. So get ready to take a screenshot of it, and we can see that our drawing has 5 tags on the top and 5 tags on the bottom. Now, the astute among you will have noticed that I have a little bit more than 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I've got these 2 extras. What are they going to be for? Well, I'll tell you. They're going to be our power filter. Rather than mounting the power filter off board like I normally do, on this one I'm going to use these 2 tags just to add in our caps and resistors and stuff for filter and power. Saves me hacksawing this apart yet again. So I'm just going to dive straight in. What are we adding first? On our drawing, the first cap on the left hand side, as I always start on the left hand side, is a 22 NF nanofarad, and I've got this tropical fish cap. Get in. And the next cap along is also a 22 nanofarad, 22 NF tropical fish cap. So that's a good start, and we can also see that we've got a 150k resistor going between the first 2 tags. Normally I mount them on the outside. However, I was going to mount this in the middle, but now I'm thinking I might actually stick to mounting it on the outside. Let's see where we are anyway. So our first tropical fish cap, what I am going to do is actually, I know I've shown this a million times, but when I'm adding these in, I'm going to use my flat nose pliers just to measure the leg height, because then they'll all sit at the same height. Because I'm using a lot of these tropical fish caps in this build, I want them all to look uniform, otherwise it'll just look a bit, I don't know, bit bougie or whatever you want to call it. Let's have a look. So this is going to fit in here. Now, these caps actually cross over, which is most annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them sit right up against the tags up this end and just have the legs crossing over. So all I'll have to do is basically heat shrink one of the legs on one of the caps, which will be our second cap. And those of you who have followed me for a while now know that I normally slide the cap in. I'll clip it here like this, and then I'll slide the cap along and sit it in the middle. But because I want these caps to sit against the back bulkhead, or well, against this top tag bulkhead, it's not a wall, is it? If I snip it there, I'll have to bring it forward away from this tag to fit it in. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get my flat nose pliers, and the two tags that I'm working with here, the first two on the bottom row, I'm just going to bend them down. Now, what I do then is, instead of snipping right the way down here where the tag begins, I'm going to snip right at the top where the tag is bent over. And that way it keeps the leg just long enough that you can situate it over the hole of the tag, and then as you bend the tag up, the leg of your capacitor will just naturally slot through that hole, and that way you can keep it right up against that back wall and still be able to have it up there. I mean, to be fair, would you really want to have it right up against the back wall? I don't know. You probably don't need to with the way that you're laying it out, especially if you're using like different types of capacitors or whatever. But to me, it really does matter. Now, there's nothing else going in this top tag here, so I am just going to solder that in place. There. So as you can see, we've got our first tropical fish in place. It's sat right up against this top tag. Let's get rid of the excess there. And that's only because we're going to have this cap going this way and it's going to cross over this one. So that's going to give us the space to do that. And of course, to keep the same height, I'm going to yet again use my flat nose pliers to bend the legs over. So then I've got the height correct. This time, though, this front component leg is going to bend in the opposite direction because this is the bit that's going to cross over. Now, what I could do is I could use an old offcut, or if you haven't got an old offcut that is that's long enough, all you can do is just snip some of your sheathing off your cable. Now, I don't actually know how long this needs to be, so if I get the cap in place, we can see how far off we are. I think that'll be enough. Maybe I'll take a little bit off it just to be safe. At least then I'll know the ends are straight anyway. There we are. While I'm building this one, I'd love to know if there's any other weird and wonderful rare pedals that some sort of famous guitarist has used for a record or a song that I'll know that I like. And I'd love to be able to dive in and build other gear. Like, I think someone suggested a Randy Rhoads Polka Dot Distortion Plus, which is great. I'm definitely going to do one of them. Maybe not do Polka Dot, because that could be some sort of copyright infringement, maybe, on a MXR. I don't know if they... Seems like something they would copyright, to be fair. So maybe not that, but I'll definitely do that circuit and aim it at Randy Rhoads. I used to have a cream Les Paul as well, a white Les Paul, a 90s one. That, would you believe, funnily enough, some woman with a pram knocked it over in a bakery and snapped the neck on it. Well, cracked the headstock, the back of it. It had the famous Gibson split. And this guy from the UK, Steve, from Manchester Guitar Tech, fixed it for me. And he only charged me 40 quid, I think, for this glue neck repair. And he's no slouch when it comes to repairs. I think he was quite surprised because usually it costs more, but people want the neck refinishing and stuff. And I said, nah, I want to be able to see it because it's like all battle scarred like myself, you know, covered in crap tattoos and scars. Why not? I wish I'd never sold that guitar. It actually went to somewhere in Eastern Europe in the end. Oh well, one that I've loved and lost. I'm sure everyone else has got similar war stories of guitars that they should never have sold that they have. Right. I do advise though, if you're going to do this with regular tropical fish caps, you want to be careful because they're quite fragile and they don't normally hold up too well to this sort of bending and treatment unless you've resin coated them or something. But I got these particular ones from, where did I get them? I don't know, but they come in the original packaging and for some reason it just really helps them hold up better. So there you go. Right, now the reason I haven't soldered the other two legs here is because our next component is going to go in there. Most fuzz circuits aim for sustain and warmth, but the Bosstone just didn't. It aimed to cut through the mix and be mean, aggressive and in your face. And that's exactly why Randy California of Spirit used it to fight through the mix. And yes, I'll only be building 3 of these pedals, so grab one while you can. They'll be finished in leather and also some cool Japanese fab. Head over to hellosailoreffects.com to get one while you can. There'll be a pinned comment on this video now. The first 3 people will get them, and then after that, they're gone. This is our next component. Well, I hope it is. It's from an unlabeled packet of resistors, but if my eyes don't deceive me, I think this is a 560k resistor. I hope so, because that's what we need. So just to double check, I'm going to use the trusty old Fluke 101. If anyone wants one of these Fluke 101s, please do buy it from the affiliates link in the description of this video. It really does help the show. No extra charge to yourself, but I do get a small kickback. A seamless transfer to a shameless plug. This thing is, I say it all the time, but it has literally been around the world with me. Look at it. It's fixed countless defects on board warships. This has much more than it's worked on pedals. Anyway, let's see what we're working with. So 557. Now you'll notice here, this is an interesting point actually. The first couple of times I looked at these readings, I was like, oh, it's the wrong one. It's the wrong resistor. It's 0.557. However, if we look at it properly, the scale is actually in megohms. There's this little M in the corner. So 0.556 megohms is 556k, which is, you know, close enough for government work. Now, this thing goes in on the bottom row and goes straight up to the top row on the second tag along. There we have our first 3 components in. We've got our 2 22 NF capacitors and then also this 560k carbon film resistor. If we get our drawing up, we can see that the next components to go in will be an 18k in the next tag along. But before we get to that, I'm going to go ahead and situate this 150k resistor in these 2 lugs here. And then also coming out the back of the 22 NF cap and 560k resistor, we have yet another 560k resistor coming to the next tag over here. Normally I don't do the outside edges while I'm soldering the center, but today I'm just going to do it. Now that we've got them in place on the outside edge, we're going to move on to this cluster of components on our next bit. I mean, this seems absolutely insane to me. However, what we have is 18k resistor coming in the 3rd tag along on the top and bottom, coming straight up and down. We're going to add that in now, along with, if we look at this top tag, we can see like a white link wire that goes to the next tag along on the bottom row. So it drops in the 4th tag on the bottom. I'm going to add that in now, so I'll do the 18k resistor, and then I'll also do that link wire, and that's because I can solder them in at this point here, at this top position, because nothing else goes in there. But the rest of it is going to be like all convergent on this one tag, which seems like it's going to be a nightmare, but we'll see. I haven't gone over the top with the size of these components, which is probably going to be a godsend when it comes to doing this bit, because they seem like they're going everywhere. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this wire as the link, and that is because I haven't actually got any component legs loafing round, and I have this to hand. To do that, all I do is strip and tin both ends of the wire. I mean, if nothing else, the pink sheathing on it will make the wire, the circuit board, or the circuit board, I always say that. It's not a circuit board, the tag board. It'll make the tag board match the wiring of the rest of the pedal, so at least that will happen. Now let's get that resistor in as close to the one next to it as we can in terms of straight and square. And then we can solder this end here because nothing else is going in there. And actually on this top row, I think we can pretty much solder in every component that we're going to come to now. But we can't solder in this tag here because they all seem to be going into it. I didn't do this layout, of course. It is from Mark. I think it's Mark Hamill is the guy's name. He's done so many of the layouts that I build. He's like the oracle, I think. And I'm pretty sure that when we were speaking to Aaron from Dominion Electric, he was telling us he lives local to him and he has, you know, a reasonable relationship with him. Like he speaks to him and stuff about circuits, which is mad because I've been following this guy or his designs and builds for literally the longest time. It looks like we've got a long way to go on this circuit, but that's just because we've got these extra tags on. We're actually nearly complete. So far, it seems like this would be a reasonable beginner circuit because there isn't that many components and they're not like real difficult to find. Right, I'm going to solder this top leg in because there's nothing else going in there, as we previously said. Now there's also yet another 22 NF cap going in the same tag. And if we look at our drawing, we can see that there's literally all three of them going into the same tag. And the way that they've drew it here, you can actually see that the components that we mount on the outside edge, the 560K and the 50PF cap, they are all going into the same tags as well. So in total, this one tag would have had 5 components going into it. That's just too much. Especially, well, it's probably not too much if you're using little tiny components or what have you, but that's no good for me. Although I am being sensible today, I'm sure people will notice. So now we're going to do like a 2 tag stretch with this one. It's going to go in the same tag here, and then it's going to go one over yet again on the top row. We can't solder this top row one in because we've got some diodes going in there. So there's no go on that. But I think we can solder this top tag in now. So that's good. The question is, why won't this sit up straight? That's annoying. I'm going to try and get it to sit reasonably close to the level that the other ones are sat at, just so then it all looks okay because they're the same cap, so it'd be nice if they're all in a row. Do people even care about that who aren't me? Okay, so next is going to be a 50 PF capacitor, and I've got this. This is an old audio cap. I don't know what makes them audio caps, but you tend to find these little polystyrene things in audio circuits. It's going to go into, stupidly, look at this for an interesting one. If you look at our drawing, the 560K resistor goes into the same tag as this. And I've went ahead and soldered it in like some sort of idiot. So we're going to have to get around that. But before we do that, I'm just going to solder this link wire in because I haven't soldered this top edge in. And there's nothing else, or bottom edge I should say. There's nothing else going in there. So if we get rid of that. Now this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand it up on end like this and then just lie that component leg across, and that will meet the leg of our resistor, and I'll just solder them together. But the first step of that plan is to get this soldered in here. Now these polystyrene, or I'm pretty sure they're polystyrene caps, they don't handle heat as well as others, so soldering to this center tag isn't the best thing. But if you're quick with your iron and you get enough heat in there, there's no problem. Right, there we go. Oh, let's get it straight. or as straight as my Mark 1 eyeball will let me. For those who haven't seen my previous videos, in the Navy, every military component or military board or piece of equipment will have a mod state. And that tells you how many times it's been modified since it's like come into creation. For example, where's that? Ah, here we go. So there's our PCB that we're going to take our transistor from. This is an ACU, and somewhere on it it'll have its mod state. Ah, see here? So it has mod record, and every time that it gets modified and a different version comes out, they'll put a little cross through one of these, so it'd say, you know, mod state 1, mod state 2, and then you'll know whether it's compatible with the kit that you're using. So in the Navy, we have a saying, if we're just having a look at something, we'll say we're using our Mark 1 eyeball, unmodified eye, or just a standard eyeball. That'll make no sense whatsoever to most people, but it kind of makes sense to me. What's next? Okay, so we've got all of our outside edge components, and really the only other components left, apart from our transistors in the fuzz side of things, is our 2 diodes. Now for diodes, I bought these from an old radio repair guy. I buy loads of these like job lots of radio repair guys kit, basically. And these are Willow Vale Electronics. And it's in its original packaging, and it name drops like Philips and Pye, Grundig, Sharp. I never heard of them. Whirlpool, GEC, Ferguson. So it name drops all the big brands. I thought this was funny. Normally the 4148s are like the cheapest components in the world. They're like the industry standard diode, especially for guitar pedals. But I've never taken them out of a real package before. They've always just come in a big strip. So at least that's something special maybe about these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten them out. I tell you what, the legs on these, you probably can't see on here, are considerably thicker than the ones that I normally buy. These are much more akin to resistor legs, and anyone who's built with 4148s before will know that the legs are like really flimsy and thin compared to even quarter watt resistor legs. But these are actually pretty tough, pretty well made. Get in. Now, I wonder if there's a source of buying more of these. If anyone knows of a source to get these, please let me know. So if we look at our drawing, we can see the 4148s have the cathode pointing where the cathode, which is the bit with the little black band round it. Each one is pointing in a different direction, and that is because it's going to be clipping a different half of the signal. These diodes are going from the signal through the 22NF cap straight to ground, which means that it's hard clipping. So this is a hard clipping fuzz. Interesting. You'd probably be able to put these on some sort of switch and maybe do asymmetrical or something like that. I'm actually going to helicopter the legs. And if anyone hasn't watched my my channel before, I absolutely hate helicopters. And pushing these legs together like this just reminds me of the rotor on a helicopter. So in my time in the Navy, I think I've picked out 3 or 4 helos that have crashed or gone down in the water, and no one ever survives, ever. I think them guys are absolutely nuts going up in them contraptions. I honestly, you wouldn't catch me up there. I don't like flying anyway, at the best of times. I feel like I can swim and I can't fly, you know. Anyway, let's get this thing in here. Once you've got them together like this, it really doesn't matter which way around you put them, because, you know, there's a diode clipping one half of the signal either way. And there's nothing else going into these tags, so we can just, of course, solder it straight in there. As ever, diodes don't like heat, and them ones really weren't soldering, and it's best practice not to keep your iron on there for too long, like I just did then. They don't seem hot. That could have been a number of things. It could have been the fact that I never cleaned the component legs, although to be fair, they look pretty shiny. Or it could have been that I never got any solder on my tip, enough solder on my tip to aid the heat transfer. Either way, it took longer than it should have. There. Now, apart from our diodes, that is apart from our transistors, that is everything done for the fuzz side of things. I think choices are now, I could either move on and do our power filter and add in a little links, or I could add the transistors so the fuzz is done and then add in all of our power stuff. I think I'm going to go with the transistors. This circuit has a 2 transistor setup, similar to a fuzz face, but it's nothing like a fuzz face. Similar in the fact that there's 2 transistors. However, there's such a tight bias window that it's really easy to mess this pedal up. Let's see if I can implement my military transistors to make this thing work. Okay, so onto the transistors, and if we look at our drawing, we can see in the bottom corner here, it tells us what transistors to use, which are MPS 6513 for the NPN, or a 2N 4249 PNP. I don't have either of them, but right at the bottom it says for the PNP you can try BC 547 or 557. Now I have a BC 557B. I'm going to give this a go. It says that we're aiming, because it's silicon there'll be no leakage, but it's saying that we're aiming for a gain range between 100 to 300 HFE. So we'll use our Peak Atlas DCA 55. I literally couldn't build pedals without this thing. Well, pedals with transistors, that is. I think you're guessing at what you're using. It seems insane to me. Anyway, what's it saying? PNP silicon transistor, yes, that's what we hope for. It gives us our pin out, which we definitely need. And this is a 319 HFE. So it's so slightly over spec, but more gain means more gain, right? We're going for that good old Randy California stab. So I figure I'm just going to put this in. What would you do? Let me know in the comments. Would you go through the rest of my pack of these transistors and look for one that is a lower gain range? Or would you use the extra 19 HFE as a big punch in the face like Randy does through a clean amplifier? Anyway, let's get back to our pin out. So on the bottom row from our diodes, we've got the collector going into the diodes, and we can see that the blue is the collector. Then we've got the base going into the next tag along, and we can see that the green is the base and the red is the emitter, which is going into the next tag along after that. And what that means is we have collector, base, emitter, so we don't have to swap over any legs on this one because they're orientated the right way around, which is fantastic. I like it when that happens, especially when I'm using a transistor that I've never used before. So I don't really know the pin out off by heart. It's not like using like a BC183 on a fuzz face in Q2 and I know I'm swapping the legs over or whatever. Or is it Q1? Anyway, I'm just going to slot it in. And again, apologies to people who watch this show all the time. You'll know what I'm going to say now. I always solder the middle leg first, like so. And that is just because then once the solder's dry, you can straighten up the transistor. So then it's square, the body of the transistor is square to the tags. So it's not like lopsided or anything like that. If it's square to the tags, that means that when you bend it upwards, it will sit straight above the board. It won't like be punched over or anything like that. Right, I'm going to go ahead and solder all of the legs in now while I'm here. These silicon transistors do tend to hold up a little better with heat compared to their germanium counterparts. Probably one of the many reasons we did swap over from silicon to germanium. I'm definitely not getting into that. But there is our first transistor installed. Now for the fun part. We're going to reclaim one of these transistors for our fuzz. The question is, which one? Now, if we look at this board, they're all pretty much going to be the same. And the tolerance of these isn't too bad. I mean, they're not amazing. They're better than the BFX 85 that I get off the other type of board that I salvaged from the Type 23 frigate back when I was actually going to sea. Out of all of these, I think this one here is like relic the most. It looks like kind of aged or what have you. And that might be a sign that it's been in some sort of heat. But I know this board well enough to know that the heat's always over this side. And this row of transistors are quite a bit away from it. But it does look kind of relic, so I'm going for that. And all I like to... And I know someone's going to say, get the solder braid, do it properly, yada, yada, yada. Or a solder sucker, solder pump, whatever you call it. I'm not keen. All I do is wet the tip, find the bottom of this transistor, which is here, and then I'll just heat up the pads that the transistor is going into, and just manipulate the transistor body to slowly work out the pads. The added benefit of doing this is I know there's not too much heat going into it because my fingers are there and it would hurt. And there we go. The transistor comes out. It has this little sort of stand on the bottom of it, like a standoff, I should say. I just slide that out the way and get rid of it. It maybe would be nice to have it in there, but don't need to. Now, what I will say is we'll test it before we go any further, because we actually don't know much about this transistor in the way of what type of life it's had. Of course, the board it's come from actually did fail, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to salvage it. Now we're looking on, if we get our drawing up in the meantime, we know we're looking for the NPN silicon transistor, but we want anywhere between 90 and 180 HFE. So this one is currently, it's an NPN silicon transistor like we want, yes, great. Gives us our pinout, which is amazing. And then it tells us 195. So this one's also slightly over. Instead of being 19 over, this one is 15 over at 195. Now, to me, that kind of seems fitting. We're going for the Randy California tone. It is very stabby and high gainish. I'm going to go with this. I'm just going with it. I like that this one's quite relict and aged. It's naturally relic. Relic at sea and at war. Why not? Actually, funnily enough, I've done quite a few deployments with this transistor with me back in the day. In fact, I think the last time I did deployment on that ship was 2016, when I discovered that pedal show and got back into pedal building. So there you go. Let's get back to our pinouts. So red is the base, which is the center one. Blue is the collector and green is the emitter. Now, if we look at our drawing, we can see that they are indeed orientated emitter base collector, which means again we won't have to cross over any legs. So there is a choice now. What I could do, if we move that out the way, is put the transistor straight in here and have it just sticking off the edge just ever so slightly like that. Great, there'd be no issue there. However, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use the Hubcap John method. Now, if anyone knows of Hubcap John, you know what I'm talking about. The man's a genius. He makes the most beautiful looking pedals ever. He's a design wizard. He's actually designed the logo for the Pedal Dive podcast. We just haven't got round to doing the final touch up on it. For my partner in crime, John, Mr. Space Wolf, is all over that sort of thing. It's not really my bag, but he's going to do some touch ups on it. But it was actually Hubcap John who designed it after he come on the show. But his method for these transistors are take a small piece of Vero board, three strips long, and mount your transistor to said Vero board. So we mount the transistor in here, and then what we can do is we can add in 3 legs coming off here and add them longer, and then we've got ourselves a little transistor. How fantastic is that? But that's exactly what I'm going to do. So while we're here, I'll just solder them in. I love this. I can't believe I'd never thought of it myself. He's a genius. And that's probably why I never thought of it myself, because I am not. But I'm going to use this all the time. I love it, especially for these transistors that I'm reclaiming from warships. The legs really aren't that long. I used to do the hook and loop method sometimes, but it's a bit cumbersome, you know. So there we have it started off. Now, as if by magic, I've got 3 component legs that I salvaged before. And all I'm going to do is just drop them through the holes and solder them in. And that'll be our transistor ready to go. Absolutely love that. So if you're watching, John, thank you very much, mate. That was probably the most exciting and inspirational bit of information I've had this year. I don't know whether that says anything about the year that I've had or whether this is really just amazing. And I've just messed it up again. The last time I did this on camera, I dropped all of the legs out as well. So maybe I'll just do the 2 of them and come back to that last one before I make a fool of myself anymore. Speaking of being foolish, I must honestly portray like some sort of incompetence out, because I don't know, I've got some people telling me some weird things about my videos and what I should and should be doing. One guy actually told me last week or the week before that I should be that my videos are too long and I should be aiming for 10 minutes long. It still blows my mind, that one, 10 minutes, especially after you've sat and watched. Like, and I struggle to get them under an hour of me soldiering and whittering on and sharing thoughts. And then your reaction to that is to say, sorry, shit, mate, you want to get it in under 10 minutes. Otherwise, it's not valid. I don't know. Right. Now that we've done that, I mean, let's face it, right? It's an NPN transistor. I know usually the little tab on an NPN transistor is the emitter. Or usually is the emitter, but I'm still going to check it, because what is the point in getting all the way through this build, doing a lovely wiring job, cable tying it all in, and then going to plug it in and getting no sound because I've messed up the pin out at the last minute, being cocky. So I might as well check. Red is the emitter, as suspected. Blue is the blue is the base in the center, and green is the collector. On our drawing, red, the emitter, goes into the first tag. Blue, the base, goes into the next tag along, and then the green collector goes into the third tag along. Simple. It's exactly how we thought it would go, but it can't hurt to check it. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'll just solder the center leg, so then straighten everything up. That wasn't a very good solder joint. Right, that's a bit of a weird one today to straighten up, because it's not like straightening a normal transistor, of course. There, now if I just clip off the excess of them legs, there's our fuzz part of the circuit completely finished. What I am going to do is let's get our, this is going to be our enclosure. We can see the glue where the pins coming through from the pin badge, or the steel reinforced epoxy. This is going to sit over the top. If I wasn't to bend them up, what is going to happen? It's really going to get in the way up here. I mean, I could move the circuit down here. It's just not going to work. So I'm going to have to bend these up to keep them out the way. And that is fine with me. The pedal will sit here. And as ever, people will know I'm going to say this, that leaves a little corridor down here for me to run one big solid wire and loom round and get loads of cable ties in there. People who watch these videos regularly will be really impressed with how small I've kept the components on this one, which is why for the power filter I'm not going to do that. Normally I would use much smaller capacitors, smaller in physical size, not in value, but I feel like I need to get some mojo back. I've been too sensible here. So to accommodate our larger capacitors, what I am going to do is remove the 4 tabs in the centre here. I'm going to run the capacitors to these centre holes here. While I'm removing them, let's get our drawing up and discuss it. So this drawing is courtesy to my mate Jimmy. He runs Jimmy Scandal's Repairs. He's out in London. He's bought a few pedals from me. He's an absolute gent, and he does these drawings for me. And as you can see, we've got 100 UF, so 100 microfarad cap, and 100 NF cap. And we've also got 2 390 ohm. Oh, he's put 380 ohm there. It doesn't really matter. On the original filter that I took this from, which is an old Crybaby wire, I believe, there was a Zener diode in there as well for polarity protection. Don't worry about that. But instead of having 2 resistors, it had one 1K resistor on the input. But instead of that, what I like to do is basically have a resistor for the power going into the caps and then a power coming out of the caps, kind of like you'd have on an amplifier filter stack. I don't know how much difference it makes at these voltages. Probably not that much, I would imagine, but it's just the way that my brain works, and I like to do it that way. So just clean this the legs of this up quickly. If we look at our drawing again, our actual drawing of the Bosstone, we can see that on the top row we have our 9 volt going in on the top row, and on the bottom row we have our ground going in. So what I am going to do is the bottom row of these tags here is going to be our ground, and the top row is going to be our 9 volt, and that'll just help us wire everything in later on. But first things first, we're going to start off with our 100 NF cap. All I'm going to do is bend the legs straight down. I'm using one of these JB caps. I know Marcus Reeves say it all the time. Marcus Reeves likes these, so they can't be bad. And so we put that in place. I'm not going to solder anything just yet. Then we take our electrolytic cap. Now this is, if you look at our drawing, you'll see that the negative side has to go to negative. And the side with this little dimple in is the positive side that goes to the positive. Well, I'm using this ITT cap. It does have a dimple, and it also has a line pointing to the positive side. And the positive side, as we said before, is going to point upwards. So I'm just going to make sure that is pointing upwards. And I know you should put the value pointing up so then everyone can see what it is. However, because I'm vain and I like the brand ITT, I'm going to put the ITT pointing upwards. I know all the amp repair guys out there are literally cringing watching me do this. They hate it when you put a cap in upside down on an amplifier, so they can't read it when they're testing them or what have you. Right, now they're in place. The next thing, well, first of all, I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll solder in our 2 negative sides of our caps at the bottom here. There. Now for the positive sides, I'm going to take my two 390 ohm caps, resistors. I'm going to put them together and clip the bottom so then they're the same length. This will become important later on. And then the top half, I'm just going to make a little loop, because that's what our power input, our 9 volt input to the circuit, and it is going to come from this one here. And then this one here, I'm going to leave long and just bend it over. And that'll become apparent in a second too. So let's deal with this one first. It's going to go in the outside edge. So next to our electrolytic capacitor. And I am going to solder that just in place now. And that is where the 9 volts is going to come from, our 9 volt jack round and attach in there. This one, however, is going to sit in the next one along. But if you look at our drawing, our 9 volt goes into the fuzz side of this circuit right at this 18k in the 4th tag along. So if we count the tags along, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can see our 18k, which is just here, goes into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my snips in line with the hole, bend the leg over. Oh, look at that. It's just not long enough, would you believe? Anyway, bend the leg over and make like a U shape, and that way I can go in both of these holes at the same time. So what does that do for us? Our power will come into this resistor here. It'll see these caps. That will take any ripple out and shove it to earth. Great. And then it'll come out of these two caps, through this resistor, down this leg and straight into the circuit. So what does that mean? The difference between doing it this way and the way that I normally do it is, now we only have to run one 9-volt wire to this circuit, and it goes through the filter and to the fuzz without us having to wire anything else in. I don't always do it because it adds 2 tags to the length of your tag board, and sometimes there's not enough space for that. But here, you know, there's only 5 tags long. There's definitely space for it, and there's no like trim pots floating around on the top. You know, the top's not too busy for it. Now it's going to be a squeeze to get in here and solder this, because you know you've got your resistors in the way now and the caps. So I'll just flip it over and I'll solder it from the bottom. It's no hassle at all. Oh, people are probably screaming at the screen now. If not, they've already wrote a comment telling me I've missed something. Yes, I know. If I snip 2 of the legs off, the other 2 legs that are left over are going to get bent round and soldered to the tag next to them. And that's because, of course, both of these tags are negative and both of these tags are positive. So if we don't solder them together, they won't be touching, which means that they won't be in the circuit. Or at least one of them won't be in the circuit. So there we go. I'm chasing that round. I tell you what, you know I always talk about them handy arms that you can buy so you can solder stuff and your work doesn't move. My mum actually come to visit the other day and she brought me some of them handy arms. So I'm chasing this work round the bench trying to solder it. But actually, if I was just to take 5 seconds to go and put these arms together, I wouldn't have to. Of course. True Hello Sailor Effect style, taking the hard way instead of the easy way. There we have it. Every component wired in. I mean, I tell you what, I think this is looking good. Now, let's get on to the enclosure. Here's everything for our enclosure. We've got our gold pin 3-pole double throw switch. Great. Our 2 100k pots, 1 linear, 1 log. We've got our input and output jacks and our DC jack. I'm going to go ahead and get them situated now. And of course, actually, we've also got our massive washer. People either love these or hate them. So that had to go in there. And you'll also notice when looking at this enclosure, something very important. I know he's going to be feeling left out because I haven't mentioned them so far. And he'll have seen this enclosure and gone, Joe did this for me. Especially for me because he knows I love it. It is, of course, Mr. Craze Fandango. I know how much you love the off-center foot switch. I had no reason to put it off-center this time because there's loads of space in the enclosure for this to sit. And, you know, because I'm adding the power filter here instead of over here, there really was no reason other than I know you love it, mate. So put it to the side just for you. I'm going to go ahead and get this all in place now. There's all of our hardware now in the enclosure. This is what it's going to look like. We'll get to the knobs later on. Haha. But there's loads of space in here. See what I mean? I created this space just for Craze Fandango to have his offset foot switch. So where are we going to start with the wiring? Well, usually I like to start top left corner of the board and then work my way round. So that's what I'm going to do. And top left corner of the board on this one is ground. So let's get the ground loop out the way. I will be running some solid core wire. This stuff, which is transformer wire. It's quite heavy gauge. Between the 2 jacks. Then I'll run a line down to touch our 9-volt DC jack. And I'll run wire coming out of one of these jacks. It'll come down. We'll go to pin 1 of both of our pots. We'll go to this point on the board here, our earth, which is top left corner. That is going to be the emitter of our NPN transistor. Then I'll also run a wire round to attach to the back end of our power filter in this corner, the bottom right hand corner. And then finally, one more wire will run down and go to the center pin of our 3-pole double throw switch. That'll be to operate the LED. And that should be all of our earths. There's all of our earths wired in. We've got our copper bar going across the top, dropping down into our 9-volt DC jack. We've got the two pin number 1s on our volume and our attack pots. Now this is important actually. If you look at our drawing, we can see that on the attack pot, it's showing an input going to attack 1. That's not correct. It should be the earth, the ground going into attack 1 and the input going into pin 3. So this is going to be our attack pot here, upside down, so it's the left hand side. Now that that's clear, we've also got our earth going to 2 places on the board, top left, bottom right, and then round to our 3-pole double throw jack. Next up on the list is 9 volts. Now 9 volts comes straight from this. So on our drawing, obviously, if you're not adding in the filter, 9 volts comes from the 4th tag along on the top row, which is this position. However, for us, because we added this filter, our 9 volts is going to come from here. And I'm going to follow this wire and loom round and just go straight. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to come out the back of it, follow around this way. So this is difficult actually. I'm torn on. So the 2 ways I can go. I can follow this loom round here and go up this way, or I can come underneath and follow this loom round here and go round this way. And the problem is I've created them 2 wiring looms now. I suppose I'll be adding an extra line in here if I go this way, whereas I won't if I go that way. So that way it is. Now the first bit I'm going to strip a little bit more than I need off and tin it, because this is going to go through our DC jack. Because I don't use any sort of battery, although I've got the space here, okay, I'm going to solder both of these 2 live pins together. So our earth is going to the middle one, which would normally be our battery. And then this bottom one is going to go to our circuit. But then if I make the leg long enough, I can solder them both together. Right, there's that end soldered in, and both of them tags are now soldered together. I'm going to run the wire around. I tell you what, in work not too long ago, I forgot my screwdriver set. And I was trying to wire something up. And I just couldn't do it because I'm so used to manoeuvring wires around with this. I use this much more as a stick to push stuff into place more than I do a screwdriver. How interesting is that? It was actually a suggestion from someone on a video to get these weird screwdrivers, and my wife bought me them for my 40th birthday, which is fantastic. 40 years old, eh? God, I feel old. Right, so then it's going to come up, and all we're going to do is just snip it off high enough to go through our little loop on our resistor, and that's going to be our 9 volt supply to the board. There we go. Put it through and then give the resistor a little squeeze so it's like crimped down on it. Get that mechanical connection. That means absolutely nothing in these pedals, but I do like it. It comes from building amplifiers. It is much better to get a mechanical connection because, you know, the shaking of an amplifier playing, it rattles round a lot and they get battered getting in and out of you know, the gig van or whatever. And there's high voltages in there, so you really do need to get a good mechanical connection with pedals. You know, pragmatically thinking, probably not as important, but I still do it anyway. Right, there's our 9 volt in. So what wire's next? Next we can see from the top of our diodes, which is the 5th pin along, it goes, there's a yellow wire on our drawing that comes out and goes to pin 3 on our volume pot. So our volume pot today is on the right hand side. So let's get that in there. I'll put it in the volume pot first. I'm going to just create a loop and then attach it over there. Should really do the center tag first, or the center lug first, because I've got the space to do it before soldering this one in, but whatever, we're following the circuit first. There we go. Now I'm going to manipulate this round so it follows the wiring loom, of course. And then it's going to come round to the fifth tag along. So the back of our 2 diodes. So you can see there the diodes are right at the end of the circuit and just hard clipping everything to ground. If you was to remove them diodes via the switch, so you'd had like you could just put a toggle switch in there and have diodes in one setting and then no diodes in the other, I'd be willing to bet that you lose a substantial amount of grit and get an awesome amount of clean headroom. I don't know whether it would be clean because the way that the pedal's set up, I don't know the circuit well enough, but I'd be willing to bet that you get a boost in volume like nothing else. It definitely wouldn't be a Randy California pedal then, because if you listen to him live, he really does like to, I mean, I describe it like a punch in the face because that's what it sounds like. It's like so aggressively strident, especially as it sounds like he's going into a clean amp. I'm not too sure what amp he used. I wonder if anyone can tell me in the comments what amp Randy California of Spirit used. Right, okay, so what's next? That's all of our top row wired in. The only wire coming out the bottom row is this bottom left tag, and that is going through to pin 2 of our attack pot. That's all of the wires coming off our board now in place. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of the wires that are labelled up on our drawing. So we have our input and our output basically from these 2 pots here. This is our attack pot, and tag number 3 or pin number 3, which is labelled up as pin number 1 on this drawing, is going to go to our input. Now, lots of people have said that I think, including Simon JSAFX, who is like the oracle and literally my personal sage when it comes to guitar pedals, but even he thinks that I'm getting the wiring upside down for the way that I like to call pots 1, 2 and 3. However, this drawing here that we're going off actually has the volume pot wired in the way that I would think about it, and the attack pot wired in the opposite way round. So unless this attack pot works backwards, kind of like the tone cut on a Vox amp, you know, the more you turn it up, the less tone you get. Unless it's like that, I don't see what the deal is. So no one can criticise my way round for this one, because you've got one pot doing one thing and another pot doing another. So yeah, I'm going to wire them both in the way that I would do, i.e. you turn up the attack pot and you get more attack. That's the way that I think about it. So I'm just going to follow the wiring loom that we already have and send this wire right the way around the back here and go around and up the ponytail, as I like to call it, and into the front right hand side tag on our 3-pole double throw switch, which of course is our input. There. Now, also coming from the input, funnily enough, I'm going to run a component leg from the input itself to this back center lug here, which all that's going to do is when the pedal is turned off, it'll, instead of attaching this earth here, this ground, to our LED, what it's going to do is attach the earth to the input of our circuit, so it'll effectively ground out the circuit when we're not using it. I've never done that before, but after watching a Marcus Reeves video, he does these little shorts on Instagram. Fantastic they are. Yeah, he did a video on it, and I was just having a snag with one of Craze Fandango's pedals that I built for him actually, and I just rewired it because it was making some noise when it was turned off with the gain up or some stuff like that, and really all it is I could have wired it up this way and I would have never had that. And especially some of my anchor drives, the older ones, they have so much gain, and I mean like ridiculous amounts of gain, that that they can induce noise when they're off as well, if you have the gain or the volume set too high. So not too high, set very high. There's no such thing as too high, of course. Right, so there's our input wired up, going from here through to our attack pot. Now is the output, which is the other side here, the front right tag, and that's going to go to the center pin of our volume pot, because of course it comes out of our circuit here, goes round this wiring loom and into this pot, and then the center lug either attaches to earth, bleeds some of the signal to earth to give us less volume, or when you wind it the other way, it attaches to our circuit and it gives us more of our circuit going through and less earth going through to the output, which gives us more volume. Yeah, but I believe Randy California, looking at the videos of him, he plays a Strat. So yet again, I'm going to have to use that bloody Strat for the demo. I'm not looking forward to it, I've got to say. I am in the process of building a Telecaster, and I can't wait to use that instead. So when I have a single coil need for the demo, it's going to be with my new Telly, and not with that damn Strat, because that middle pickup it's just in a way, isn't it? Right. There's that in place. Last things to do, the next things to do, which coincidentally is the last things, is our input jack. I'm going to send a wire around our wiring loom and to this pin here. Our output jack, again, I'm going to come back around this way, wiring loom, and go to the center pin here. That's our input and output. Little link wire, great. And then we're going to have a resistor coming off this tag here and a wire coming round and going to our LED. That's our current limiting resistor. So I actually like to put the current limiting resistor on the negative side of the LED, on the earth side of it. For years, I thought it had to go between the 9 volts and your LED to stop. I don't know what I thought it was stopping, but it's not that. It's like a tap. As long as you slow the flow down, it doesn't matter where it is, so you can put it on the negative side. I genuinely didn't know that for years. And there we have it, all wired up now. We've got our input and output wires in, our link wire, and then I run this copper wire over here just to save running round the wiring loom, and hit it with a 10k resistor coming from the negative side of our LED. That'll make the light not that bright, which, you know, I'm pretty keen on. And I think that's a handsome looking circuit. What do you think? I'd love to know in the comments what you think of bunching wires together in cable ties and trying to keep the wiring looms down to a minimum. I'd love to know what you think about my little transistor over here doing a hubcap John method. Right, so here's 4 sets of knobs. I'd love to know what set you would prefer if you were going to own this pedal. First up, we have the good old cupcake knobs. Can't go wrong with cupcake knobs, they look good. However, I think the bright white probably doesn't suit this pedal for me, so I'm going to put them to the definitely no. Although, I've got to make sure that I've got enough knobs for all of the pedals, because, of course, I'm not just building this one, I am building 3 of them. Then we've got our dumble knobs. Would have been good if I'd have undone that enough so then it could actually sit on the pot before I put it on there. I like these, they're a bit close to the edges, but I really like how they look on there. It definitely fits in with the aesthetic, you know, the silver on here and the silver over here. Then we've got some of my favourite knobs ever, the good old Klon knobs. They're understated, they're less flashy than the silver ones. I do like them. Or lastly, we've got some Telecaster knobs. Now, I'm building a Telecaster. I'm building a candy apple red telly with a set of Dan's signature pickups, Dan from TPS. So I'm kind of trying to do a fake red. It's not going to be red, it's not going to be a clone, but it will have the same aesthetic and, of course, his pickups in. So I want to save these knobs because I'm going to do a set of 4 pedals finished in candy apple red to go along with it and release when the video comes out. So I think I'm going to give them a miss. So it takes them into the no pile. So the question is, out of these, which would you choose? I did, of course, go with the Dumble style knobs. I just think it suits this pedal much better. And look at that. How cool does that fabric look on there? I mean, This is going to turn heads on anyone's pedal board. We've got bronze real leather. No messing about there. Real soft leather and a Japanese fabric underneath with just this incredible cool print on. The gold on it is just, it just looks so vibrant. All I've got to do now is add in my epoxy for our LED, but I'll do that at a later date because I can't wait to plug this thing in and see if it actually turns on. What do we think? Is it going to turn on or not? I think it's going to turn on in all seriousness. It wasn't a difficult build and it's going to be fun to see. For the sound sample, I am going to use my Strat for the first bit just because that's what Randy California used. So I'll be using the Strat, but then I'm going to go on to my Melody Maker and or my Gold Top Les Paul because let's face it, that's where I'm comfortable. Something wild about playing this fuzz. It's unpredictable and it's raw. And now it is, of course, time for the sound sample. Before we get to that, I'd like to remind you all, there is only 3 of these units available. They'll be on my website now. Link in the description. Grab one while you can. Finished in real bronze leather. And they also have some Japanese fabric on the base. The HMS Monmouth transistors inside. And they are going to be the only 3 that I produce. Now onto the sound sample. Let me know what you guys think of these filthy snarling tones. Did I achieve the Randy California spirit theme? Or did I just make a sonic mess? So here's my clean tone. What you will notice is there's a little bit of pop. I'm going to need to add some anti-pop resistors to the LED, to the input and to the output. But apart from that, and I will add them in. That's with the attack at what? 2 o'clock? Let's see if we can increase that. Actually, that's almost like a clean boost. Okay, so now we're going to try it with my gold top. I mean, it's not a real gold top. It was made for me with Hello Sailor effects in the headstock. Love it. Split parallelogram inlays, Brazilian rosewood board, deep dish carved top, which I relic myself in a video that I could probably link in the description if anyone's interested. Let's hear what it sounds like with the pedal off. That's the bridge humbucker. It's a Sunbear humbucker. I'm just going to back off the attack a little bit because I think it's a little bit too stabby. I know that's the Randy sort of thing, but... Come on, this thing is very, very stabby, but it's going straight into a Fender Showman, like a 1964 Fender Showman. It is absolutely clean as a whistle as well. So this is all tone that's coming from this pedal. And I did say it was going to be stabby, so there you go. Let's hear some other tone. I mean, for the silicon, that actually cleans up. I mean, it's not a fuzz face. Thank you for watching the video thus far. You must be one of the few people that actually watch the whole of my videos. Thank you for subscribing, and I would love to hear what other videos you would like me to make. I'm here to serve you guys. Please tell me and I'll try my best to create what you want. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this video where I built a DoD 250.